You're listening to the Future Tech Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies such as artificial intelligence, stem cells, 3D printing, gene editing, Bitcoin, blockchain, the microbiome, quantum computing, virtual reality, and exploring space are much closer than you might think. In fact, many early versions of these technologies are in play right now, and the companies that are using these technologies are the focus of this podcast. My goal for you, the listener, is to learn from these podcasts. You may very well learn something that may change the course of your life for the better, steer you towards a new career, or give you insight into addressing a thorny medical problem. Remember, this podcast and its content is informational in nature only. No medical, tax, legal, financial, or psychological advice is being given. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please listen, subscribe, like, and tell your friends about it. Thank you.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Future Tech Podcast. I have Ryan Lewis, the Chief Operating Officer of Global Cannabinoids. So Ryan, thanks for coming.
Yeah, hey Rich, how you doing?
Good. You can hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear you great. Actually, my title is Chief Business Developer. Stands for CBD.
Okay. Excellent. So tell me about Global Cannabinoids. What's the mission of the company? What do you guys do?
So Global Cannabinoids is one of the largest manufacturers and distributors of hemp-derived cannabinoids. What I did was I built the very first bulk and wholesale B2B distribution platform for American-grown hemp and cannabinoids derived from hemp, such as CBD, that everybody knows about. I built my website right after the 2014 Farm Bill was passed because I read the legislation and I knew all the demand was going to be for American-grown hemp. Everything prior to that was, and up until the time it was actually grown, was being imported from China and from Europe. And so, I just recognized that everybody was going to be basically going to Google to search for, a supplier. And I decided to build a website advertising that I had American-grown hemp for sale in bulk and wholesale, focusing on B2B before the hemp was even grown in the United States. And so what that allowed me to do was really assess what the demand would be, which I realized very quickly was going to be massive. But secondly, I was able to build very strong relationships early on with some of the bigger buyers.
The people that rose up initially to provide hemp, to provide CBD from hemp, the American growers, were they small people or were they big companies?
Yeah, so the first state to adopt the federal hemp legislation was Colorado. Colorado's obviously very progressive in their views on cannabis in general. And so, I was sitting in my New York City apartment. Basically, I had just built this distribution platform and, was building relationships with companies that basically were saying, hey, we want to buy American-grown hemp and CBD. But the next thing I needed to do was obviously get a supplier. And the first state that I traveled to, which was the first state that adopted the hemp legislation, was Colorado. And I started touring all of the farms in Colorado, really to see what type of, plants were being grown, what type of genetics. There's obviously a few varieties of hemp. There's hemp is actually synonymous with fiber and seed. So, traditionally, the hemp that you find around the world has a long stalk and stem. It produces very, very small amounts of cannabinoids. Once the Farm Bill legislation passed in 2014, that changed everything because for the first time, you could grow female plants. And the female plants produce high amounts of cannabinoids. So Colorado was really the first state to produce these, what we call cannabinoid-rich hemp plants.
Okay. So Colorado was the first state, but who in the state? Was it, again, individuals or large companies?
Oh,
who was doing it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was a very big mix. You had traditional farmers who were trying it out. You had guys who had been in cannabis and were transitioning over. Essentially, you would start a company no matter what. Even if you're an individual and you're going to start farming, producing it, you're still going to form a corporation of some sort. I ended up finding a company in Colorado that was, they had raised a few $1 million and had some really amazing genetics that they had brought over from California. A friend of theirs had spent literally a decade breeding the THC out of a marijuana plant so that the level of THC was below 0.3%, which was generally recognized as internationally as the percentage allowable to be defined as hemp. Once the Farm Bill clearly defined it as hemp, what it essentially did was open the door to any cultivar of cannabis that could produce less than 0.3% would now be characterized as hemp. So a lot of these genetics started coming to Colorado. Different people have been growing them, and companies started producing them. This company in particular had put several $1 million into the farm, pretty much everything they had. And then along comes me, and I introduced myself to them, got to know them, and essentially told, after realizing they had no idea what they were doing in terms of sales and marketing, I basically said, hey, listen, I can sell everything you guys are producing. And they asked me, how are you going to do that? And I told them, look, go to Google, type in CBD wholesale, CBD bulk, bulk American hemp, and I'm the top of Google. And I've already, identified hundreds of buyers. So they said, what would you want if you could do that? I said, give me 10% of your company, make me head of sales and marketing. I'll move to Colorado. I'll build a sales team. I'll rebrand you. I'll help develop products, and, I'll move this product for you. And so they agreed. I packed up my stuff and literally moved to Colorado. I'd never been there before in my life. And I just got to work doing what I do, which really my passion is sales and marketing. That's really what I'm best at. And so I ended up doing about $50 million in sales for the first 18 months of the US hemp industry. I was the first bulk distributor sending truckloads, literally cross state lines. A lot of people at the time were very afraid because there was still DEA regulations concerning, basically defining hemp still as marijuana, even though that conflicted with the federal legislation in the Farm Bill. So people were still paranoid about shipping across state lines. But we did it anyways. And I'm glad we did, because, it ended up being that we were right. The Farm Bill, legislation gave us the legal authority, and, it really, I feel very fortunate to be a pioneer in the industry and help build this supply chain, but we still have a lot of work to do.
So, all right. So you're heavily involved in the distribution, CBD from wholesalers, I guess. So for outsiders, which is most people, I don't know, what have you learned about the CBD industry? What have you learned about the product you created that's interesting or unique about it?
So the plant is very interesting in one respect, and it kind of influences a lot of the things that happen downstream. Hemp is what we call a phytoremediator. So it can literally suck the toxins out of the soil and out of the environment, and it will literally retain them. There was actually a study done where hemp was used in a radioactive waste situation, and it was able to suck radioactive cadmium out of the soil and retain it, and the plant lives with this radioactive material inside of it. So that makes the plant dangerous. If I could use the word, I mean, it could potentially be dangerous because of this ability that it has. And so you have to test the plant extensively. You have to test for everything from pesticides to heavy metals, to mycotoxins, to all different types of contaminants, which we do. And so, testing is really the cornerstone of the industry. And so, one of the things that I've learned is the absolute importance of testing. And that's how I've built my business. We, at my facility, we test everything that comes in, regardless of what my extractors, test says it says. So there's one test that comes from the farm. There's one test that comes from the extractor. Once it reaches my facility, we actually test it again in-house. I have an entire analytics team. But we don't rely on that test or the previous test, because we then still take the a sample and send it to a third-party lab for a complete analysis. So one of the things I actually joke about to people is that the products that my company's putting out and customers of Global Cannabinoids, rest assured, they're probably safer than Cheerios.
So, what do you think when someone goes to a store, smoke shop, whatever it is, and gets CBD? Are they getting what it says in the label, or is it still the wild west for the most part?
It's an unfortunate situation. It's still pretty much the Wild West. That's why you really have to be sourcing from a reputable company. One of the things that we're doing to separate ourselves from some of the bad actors is we use QR codes, and on the QR code you can scan it and get a full document traceability all the way back from the seed. Okay, so that is something that a bad actor is not going to be able to do. They're not even going to try to fake it, to be honest with you. The products that are out there that are not good products, that aren't testing well, they don't even try to show you where it came from or how it was tested or anything like that. So, there is an issue with dosing. I think in general, part of the issue has to do with the standards that the testing labs have. So in other words, you could take a sample and send it to 5 labs and get 5 different results. So there definitely has to be some accountability at the testing level to standardize the standards that are used that companies are relying upon to determine potency. I'm very excited about the FDA coming in and regulating the industry. I think it's going to help flush out some of the bad actors. Do I think that they need to? Kind of, because people are really relying on cannabinoids for their health, for their well-being. And I think it's important that we get, a marketplace intact that people can rest assured the products are good, they're safe, they don't have pesticides and those sorts of things. And quite honestly, these are the things that my company's already doing. We have one of the highest quality control teams in the industry. And so I welcome, any sort of regulation and anything that I think is going to give more confidence to consumers.
So what can consumers do? I don't know if you know this, but what do they look for when they're going to buy CBD? What will help them figure out whether it's good CBD or junk?
One of the things is to go online and do some research about the company. Take a look at the company, read some of the reviews, ask them for certificates of analysis. Take a look and see look at various certificates of analysis. So several different batches that will show you how consistent their product tests. And, I think going online and seeing like the reviews and, reading about the company, maybe press releases and different things. You kind of have to look at it from the totality of it. But one of the other things you can do too is there are retailers now that are putting products in distribution that are, have been seriously vetted. One of the exciting things about having, a CVS and a Walgreens and these types of retailers come into the market is that they do their homework. I've met with them several times. They dot their I's, they cross their T's, they do site inspections, they come to your facility, they check everything, they verify everything. So, buying your product at a reputable, retailer is obviously beneficial and smart.
Do they have CBD now at Walgreens and CVS, places like that?
Yeah, I think, they're starting to show up in some of these retailers. So, like Kroger markets are starting to distribute CBD products. I know there's a lot of health food stores that have great reputations for great products that are starting to sell it. So, I think it's consumers know where they can get a great product. When you go to like a cash and carry, like a smoke shop, and they got like I think consumers have a good sense of where they can buy a good product versus a product that might be kind of questionable. But again, I think what people need to do is they need to do some of their own research and, really kind of deep dive into it themselves, especially if they're relying on it for some sort of a condition. I think that's definitely highly recommended.
Okay, I just didn't know if there's any general guidelines, and I don't know. I mean, I've seen what's called full spectrum. I've seen, I guess, a few labels with different claims. Any particular claims that you think are patently false or that may be good?
Obviously we stay away from claims. We can't make any health claims on CBD, but you really don't need to. You can go online and find out all the information that you need, that you kind of need to know, because people are sharing their experiences online in a lot of different forums and fashions. Full spectrum essentially means that it's the full plant extract. So it contains a little bit of THC. So not more than 0.3% THC. And so that is a product that generally what I call can produce a more sustained effect, because the THC works in formulation with the other cannabinoids, and it produces what's called a synergistic effect. It's something called what researchers in Israel coined the entourage effect. And that's the synergy of compounds within that whole plant. And then you have, a purified form of CBD. So that's a CBD isolate. It's an isolated molecule of CBD. It's just pure CBD. And CBD generally doesn't work as well isolated by itself. It tends to be weaker. So some people will not feel anything. And that's just a reality when you're using a product that only has CBD and nothing else, because it really does rely on the synergy of the other compounds, including terpenes. So I would always obviously recommend a full spectrum. Part of the problem is products are mislabeled out there. Companies are calling things full spectrum that aren't full spectrum. So again, it comes back to doing your homework, finding a company with a great reputation, reading the reviews, and then purchasing the product either directly from them online or from a reputable retail location.
Yeah, I've seen hemp oil, that label. Is that CBD or what is that?
Oh, yeah. That's the favorite label of Amazon. So pretty much anything you buy on Amazon is not going to have CBD. They don't allow CBD. There are some people selling CBD on there, but they're not allowed to actually say it has CBD. So they call it hemp oil. So hemp oil is actually just from the seed. That's all it's from. Yes, it's very nutritious for you. It's a superfood. It has omegas. It has aminos. It has no cannabinoids. So if you're looking for cannabinoids, hemp oil, hemp seed oil, it's not going to give it to you. And you also have to be aware of products that are labeled like 500 milligrams hemp oil or 500 milligrams of something. It can be 500 milligrams of an oil that has 5% cannabinoids. So labels can be very, very misleading.
Huh. Okay. So I guess you're looking at a concentration ratio, or the concentration is probably the most important thing, not the volume of liquid that you're getting in a vial.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, above and beyond anything, what you really want to do is you want a product that you can pick up, you can scan the label, and you can see a third-party test that shows you exactly what's inside, because we all have a right to know what we're taking in our bodies.
Okay, are there products like that where they say scan this label and see our testing methods, see what's in here and it's determined?
Absolutely. So, my company, Global Cannabinoids, one of the things that we do is we actually create these QR codes and attach full traceability documents to them. We also provide customers with our testing labs, which are third-party labs, where we actually send a sample of the product directly to the testing lab on behalf of the customer, so they have a third-party test on it. There's some fantastic brands out there. One of them is Green Roads. Green Roads are great friends of mine. They make fantastic products, pharmacist formulated, and they really spearheaded, putting QR codes on their products and giving customers that full traceability I also know they worked with the state government of Indiana, for example, which was the first state, I believe, to require a QR code on the product to show a third-party lab result. So, there are great companies out there. Green Roads, like I mentioned, is one of them. And we are working in conjunction together to really self-police the industry, right? If we don't police it ourselves, if we don't regulate it ourselves, then the government's going to come in, and who believes the government is going to be better at doing it? I mean, unless you're, well, I don't want to get into politics, but let's just say I think consensus is, yeah, you understand where I'm going with that.
Okay. Well, just as an example, so I went to the Green Roads website, and they have like gummies and oils, things like that. So if it shows on a product how many milligrams it is, like, how do I know the concentration? Again, just look on the label and it tells me the concentration.
So when you see a bottle of their product and it says 1,000 milligrams, that means that there's 1,000 milligrams of cannabinoids in that product.
Oh, okay, I gotcha. So, right, essentially like a concentration. Okay, so that's something you look at too.
Exactly.
Huh, okay. Well, it's good to know. Interesting. And I understand, why the industry is like you said, it's what do you call it, a phyto, PHYTO?
That's right, yeah, PHYTO. It was actually...
It means it's absorbent to a lot of things, so that could be good or bad things, is the danger of...
That's exactly right. They actually... The Russians planted hemp all around Chernobyl, believe it or not.
Oh, because they knew it would absorb radiation of the soil there.
Absolutely, yep.
Very interesting. Okay. So what do you think is going to be the near-term future of CBD in the U.S., over the next 5 years? What do you think is going to happen, and what would you like to see happen?
CBD, I've always looked at as just another ingredient. CBD, I almost liken what's going on with CBD and this craze about it. I liken it to vitamin C. It's almost like, imagine vitamin C was removed from the food supply and it's being reintroduced, and amazing things are happening to people because they're getting this nutrient back in their diet. And we have a system of cells in our body called an endocannabinoid system of cells that was only discovered in the last 20 years. They're receptor cells for cannabinoids. So, I really think that I have this whole perspective on CBD and cannabinoids. I believe CBD is almost an essential nutrient. I think in 10 years from now, you could very well see it on a nutrition panel, on your, cereal box or, snack bar or whatever you're eating. But it's an ingredient, and it's a botanical, and there's thousands of botanical ingredients out there. So, yes, there's going to be pharmaceutical versions, and just like there's pharmaceutical versions of other botanicals, so the two can coexist. There's going to be a botanical version. There's going to be a pharmaceutical version. So, there's going to be products that have CBD for like a daily use kind of thing, just to have as part of the diet. And then there's going to be more advanced formulations that are targeting specific conditions and things like that. And again, there'll be versions of that you can get basically over the counter. And then there's going to be versions of that are going to be pharmaceutical. So what we're talking about here is the most medicinally powerful plant in the world, period. That's the reality. There are hundreds of compounds within this plant that are absolutely extraordinary. So we're just still learning about a lot of them. CBD is just the tip of the iceberg. There's other cannabinoids that we're working on very closely at Global Cannabinoids. We've already isolated CBN. We've isolated CBC. We've isolated CBG. These are incredible cannabinoids, and once you put them into different formulations, they have different effects. So very exciting.
Yeah.
The future of the industry is exciting. And, CBD, like I said, it's just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, quick question about the other cannabinoids. What are some of the purported effects of them? I've heard of like CBL and R, and you said G and a few others. I don't know if science knows enough yet, but what are, everyone's focused on CBD, but you said there's many, many others. What are the effects of some of the others?
Sure. So CBG, cannabidiol, pretty interesting cannabinoid. It's being grown in large amounts right now in Oregon and Colorado, and it has an uplifting effect. It's almost like an energizing effect. So very, very interesting. CBN, cannabinol, another extraordinary cannabinoid, can really promote a very restful night of sleep. I mean, I'm talking, you will go into REM, you will remember your dreams. It's pretty intense. So, but sleep is a condition that affects probably, 75% of people in the country, right? Or around the world, probably. So sleep is a massive category, and probably the most important thing you can do for your health is get a good night's sleep. So it's going to be interesting to see how that cannabinoid is introduced into, kind of the distribution, supply chain across the country. My mentor was actually the co-founder or the founder of Natrol. Ironically, his name is Elliot Balbert. And Elliot founded Natrol, and he discovered essentially melatonin. And Natrol is the #1 brand of melatonin. So it's really interesting that here we are coming full circle. My mentor discovered melatonin, built the biggest melatonin brand. And here I am, the first large-scale distributor of CBN, probably the most incredible, compound ingredient for sleep since melatonin. So exciting stuff.
Maybe one day in school, kids will learn their ABCDs. But that joke.
Oh my gosh, seriously. And there's literally hundreds of cannabinoids. I mean, we're coming across cannabinoids. We have no idea what they do. CBL, CBE. I mean, we have no idea what they do. So it's exciting. And the implications for the health of just mankind in general is actually pretty huge. I mean, some of these cannabinoids have shown to have anti-tumoral properties. We know they can stop seizures. We know what they can do for stress and anxiety. The whole CBD craze is because CBD is a proven anti-inflammatory, and inflammation is the root cause of almost all disease. So, it's exciting, to say the least, if you can't hear it in my voice.
Okay. No, that's great. All right. I appreciate you coming. What's a website for them or a resource that, would be a good way for them to get in contact? Oh,
I'm sorry. Yeah. So, is this just for information in general, or information about my company? Because my company, my company, there is a lot of information on there that people will find very, very useful. The end products all start with everything that we're doing. And the reliability of the end products that we're producing, obviously, people want to know about, what we're doing to test for it, et cetera. My website address is www.globalcannabinoids.io, and that's CANNABINOIDS.io. Say that fast 5 times.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Well, very good. Well, Ryan, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. Thank you.
Awesome, buddy. It's really great to speak to you. Anytime.
You're listening to the Future Tech Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies such as artificial intelligence, stem cells, 3D printing, gene editing, Bitcoin, blockchain, the microbiome, quantum computing, virtual reality, and exploring space are much closer than you might think. In fact, many early versions of these technologies are in play right now, and the companies that are using these technologies are the focus of this podcast. My goal for you, the listener, is to learn from these podcasts. You may very well learn something that may change the course of your life for the better, steer you towards a new career, or give you insight into addressing a thorny medical problem. Remember, this podcast and its content is informational in nature only. No medical, tax, legal, financial, or psychological advice is being given. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please listen, subscribe, like, and tell your friends about it. Thank you.